The alarm did not sound like a warning. It sounded like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to stop. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Perseverance's Wrath, watching a single red dot blink against the dark, and felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope, thin and dangerous. "Confirm it," she said. "Confirm it again." Kaito Reyes leaned over his console, jaw tight, eyes darting across data that made no sense. "It's an Earth cipher, Captain. Military grade. Pre-silence encryption. It's old. Older than me. But it's real." Nobody on the bridge spoke. Nobody breathed too loud. For 200 years, humanity had been alone in the dark, cut off from every colony, every outpost, every voice that once called Earth home. The event that did it had no name that meant anything anymore. People just called it the silence. One day the stars went quiet and they never spoke again. Until now. "Location?" Elena asked. "Dead zone," Kaito said. "The threshold. Nobody goes there, Captain. Not us, not the Vashtar, not anyone. It's marked hazardous on every star chart we've got, human or alien. Then why is a 200-year-old Earth beacon sitting in the middle of it?" Nobody answered because nobody knew. Dr. Amara Ilasanmi's voice crackled over the comm from engineering, tired and clipped the way it always was after a double shift. "Whatever it is, we've got maybe 6 hours of fuel to get there and back if we push the reactor. I'd rather not push the reactor, Captain. It's held together with hope and duct tape as it is." "Understood," Elena said. "Hold your objection. I want to hear it, but hold it." "Held," Amara said. There was a pause and then, softer. "But Elena, if that's really Earth calling, I want to go too." Elena's chest tightened. She didn't let it show. She never let it show. The Perseverance's Wrath was old, older than most of her crew, a relic from the last shipyards Earth had ever built before the silence swallowed everything. She was patched, welded, and rebuilt so many times that no two sections of her hull matched. But she was still armed, still fast, and still theirs. The last true battleship humanity had left, as far as anyone knew. Maybe the last ship, period. "Set a course," Elena said. "Slow and quiet. I don't want anything out there knowing we're coming before we know what we're walking into." The ship groaned as it turned, an old woman stretching her joints, and slid into the black toward the threshold. Meridian's presence filled the bridge the way it always did. Not a voice exactly, but a pressure behind the eyes, a certainty that something was listening. "Captain," the AI said, "I would like to note an irregularity." "Go ahead." "The beacon's encryption isn't just old. It's keyed to a command authorization that predates the founding of this vessel. I do not know how I know this. I should not know this." Elena frowned. "Explain." "I can't," Meridian said, and there was something almost like discomfort in the words, an emotion the AI wasn't supposed to have. "There are fragments in my core architecture I cannot account for. Memory addresses that reference events I have no record of experiencing. I flagged this 3 years ago as a processing artifact. I no longer believe that is what it is." Kaito glanced up. "You're saying you might be older than the ship." "I am saying I do not know what I am," Meridian said simply, and let the silence sit. Elena filed it away, the way she filed away everything that scared her. Later. She would think about it later. Right now there was a beacon and it was getting closer. The threshold looked like nothing. That was the first wrong thing about it. No debris, no radiation storms, no gravitational anomalies to explain why every star chart in known space marked it as forbidden. Just black, empty space, and at the center of it, a single point of light pulsing in a rhythm that matched, Kaito realized with a chill, the human heartbeat. "That's not a coincidence," he muttered. "Nothing about this is a coincidence," Elena said. "Bring us in slow." They were 400 kilometers from the source when space itself seemed to peel back. Warships decloaked around them, 5, then 8, then more, sleek black hulls bristling with weapon systems Kaito didn't recognize, arranged in a formation so precise it looked less like a fleet and more like a closing fist. The Perseverance's Wrath was a relic. These ships were not. "Shields up," Elena snapped, already moving toward the command chair. Kaito, weapons hot, do not fire unless I give the order. Meridian, identify. Unknown configuration, Meridian said, faster than she'd ever heard it speak. Power signatures exceed our own by a significant margin. Captain, I recommend. A channel opened before Meridian could finish. Every screen on the bridge filled with the same image. A being unlike anything human, tall and angular, skin like polished obsidian, eyes that held no pupils, only a cold, steady light. Human vessel, the being said, and its voice was translated smooth and flat, stripped of any warmth. You are trespassing in restricted space. You will surrender what you carry, and you will surrender it now. Elena kept her spine straight, even as her pulse hammered. We don't know what you're talking about. We picked up a distress beacon. We came to help. You came, the being said, because you were called, as you were always going to be. Kaito's hands hovered over his console, ready, waiting for the word. Amara's voice crackled in Elena's ear, tight with fear she was trying to hide. Captain, whatever this is, we can't win a fight against that many ships, not even close. Elena didn't look away from the screen. What do you want? The seed, the being said. Surrender the seed, Captain Voss, and your crew may yet live to see your dying world one final time. The bridge went utterly silent. Elena had never told this being her name. How? She said slowly. Do you know who I am? The being tilted its head, almost curious, almost amused, in a way that made Elena's skin crawl. Because, it said, we have been waiting for you specifically for 20 years since the day your father disappeared. The channel didn't close. It waited, patient, merciless, while every human on that bridge tried to process words that made no sense and somehow explained everything they'd never understood about the family Elena thought she'd lost, and the war humanity had never known it was still fighting. Elena's father had been dead for 20 years. She had buried an empty casket for him, and now a stranger with no pupils was speaking his name like it was a debt still owed. You're lying, she said, though her voice wavered on the last word. I have no reason to lie to something so small, the being said. I am Threnkal, fleet commander of the Vashtar Dominion, and you, Captain Voss, are the daughter of a man who cost my people a war we should have won. What war? Elena demanded. We've had no contact with anyone in 200 years. There's been no war. Threnkal's expression, if it could be called that, shifted into something almost like pity. Your species tells itself many comfortable stories. That is not surprising. You were not meant to remember. Meant to, Kaito said under his breath, and Elena shot him a look that told him to stay quiet, though she wanted to ask the exact same thing. The seed, Threnkal continued. Surrender it, and this ends without further bloodshed. Refuse, and we will take it from your wreckage. Elena's mind raced. She had no idea what the seed was. She had no proof anything Threnkal said was true, but she had 8 warships bearing down on one aging battleship, and she had a crew that trusted her to get them out alive. We don't have what you're looking for, she said. We came here because of a beacon, that's all. Then you will not object, Threnkal said, to us searching your ship ourselves. The channel cut. On the tactical display, small craft peeled away from the Vashtar formation, arcing toward the Perseverance's wrath like hunting birds. Boarding parties, Kaito said, already moving. Captain, seal every deck below C, Elena ordered. Meridian, lock down non-essential systems, give engineering priority power. Kaito, get your people to the breach points. We are not letting them walk through this ship. On it. Kaito was already running, shouting orders into his comm, and for the first time since the alarm had woken them, the crew of the Perseverance's wrath moved like a single furious organism instead of a handful of frightened people. The first breach hit Deck D with a shriek of tearing metal. Kaito met it with 6 Marines in a corridor chosen for its narrow, brutal geometry. No room for the Vashtar's superior numbers to matter. No space for their better weapons to outmaneuver human stubbornness. When the first alien soldier stepped through the smoke, Kaito didn't hesitate. He'd trained for this his whole life without ever believing he'd need it. The fight was short, vicious, and close. Human weapons were older, cruder, but the corridor was theirs, and every Vashtar soldier who came through it had to fight for every meter against people who had nowhere left to retreat to and knew it. "They're falling back!" someone shouted, and Kaito allowed himself half a breath of relief before the ship shuddered under a direct hit that threw everyone off their feet. "Hull breach, deck F," Meridian said, calm even as the ship screamed around them. "Captain, they are attempting a second entry point. I am rerouting power to compensate, but I must warn you. This vessel was not designed to withstand sustained engagement with technology of this caliber." "Then we don't sustain it," Elena said. "Amara, tell me you have something." "I have a reactor that's already at 80% and climbing." Amara snapped over the comm, sweat in her voice. "Push it further and we risk a cascade failure that'll finish the job the Vashtar started." "Push it," Elena said. "Just enough to get us clear." While the corridors burned, Meridian worked in the silence beneath the ship's systems, sifting through fragments of memory it didn't understand, searching for anything that might explain why an alien commander knew Elena's father's name. And then, buried in a data cluster Meridian had never been able to access before, sealed, encrypted, locked behind a command authorization matching the beacon itself, something opened. A memory. Not a log entry. A memory, raw and vivid, of a bridge that wasn't this one, of a battle that had no record in any archive Meridian had ever indexed, of a voice giving an order in the last seconds before catastrophic damage. Protect the seed, whatever it costs. Meridian did not know that voice, but it recognized the authorization code stamped beneath it. It was Marcus Voss's. Elena found the hidden compartment by accident, a service corridor near the ship's oldest section, a wall panel that shouldn't have existed on any deck plan she'd ever studied, revealed only because a stray shot from the fighting had cracked the bulkhead beside it. Her hand found a recessed panel beneath the crack, a keypad, ancient, military grade, the kind that hadn't been manufactured in decades. She didn't know why she typed the code. She only knew it, the way you know your own name. 6 digits her father used to hum under his breath when he thought no one was listening, back before the ship that carried him away never came home. The panel hissed and slid open. Behind it, bathed in the pale blue light of a stasis field, was a cryogenic pod. Frost crawled across its transparent surface, and beneath it, barely visible, was the outline of a human face. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She had spent 20 years telling herself her father was gone. She had built her whole life, her whole command, around the absence of him. The pod's display flickered to life, ancient systems groaning back into function after 2 decades of dormancy, and a single line of text scrolled across the frost-fogged glass. Subject: Voss, Marcus A. Status: alive. Somewhere above her, the ship shook with another impact, and Kaito's voice crackled desperately over the comm, calling for the captain, telling her the Vashtar were pulling back, regrouping, and something far larger had just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. Elena didn't answer. She stood frozen in front of the pod, staring at the face of the father she had buried without a body. And for the first time in 20 years, she didn't know if she was about to lose someone all over again, or get him back. The pod's frost cracked like broken glass, and for a moment Elena was certain she was watching a dead man's face fall apart. "Captain," Kaito's voice tore through the comm. "We need you back on the bridge. The Vashtar are pulling into formation, something huge. Just give me 60 seconds, Elena said, and didn't move. The pod hissed, exhaled a cloud of vapor, and the seal broke. Marcus Voss's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, glassy, searching. Then they found Elena's face, and something in them broke open with a grief so raw it didn't look like relief at all. "Elena," he rasped, voice wrecked from 20 years of disuse. "You grew up." She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to hold him. She did neither because there wasn't time for either, and some cold professional part of her mind, the part that had kept this crew alive for 3 years, knew that if she let herself feel this right now, she wouldn't be able to command anything ever again. "You're supposed to be dead," she said instead. "I know." He tried to sit up, failed, and let her help him. "I'm sorry. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to listen fast because if that ship out there is who I think it is, we don't have much time." Amara half-carried, half-supported Marcus onto the bridge, and the crew stared at him the way people stare at ghosts, because that was exactly what he was, to all of them. "The Vashtar think we have something called the Seed," Elena said, cutting straight to it. "They said you're the reason they're here. Start talking." Marcus leaned against the command console, breathing hard, 20 years of atrophy fighting against him. 200 years ago, Earth didn't lose contact with its colonies by accident. We chose it. The bridge went still. "What are you talking about?" Kaito said. The silence was, it was a catastrophe. Everyone knows that. Everyone was told that, Marcus said, because the truth was worse. Earth Fleet Command discovered something out past the frontier, not a war, not an enemy fleet. Something older than every civilization currently alive in this galaxy. Dormant, waiting, tied to a signal pattern that certain kinds of technological growth would eventually trigger. We were growing too fast, too visible. So Command made a choice. Go dark. Scatter everything that mattered across hidden points so no single strike, no single betrayal could hand our enemies. Or worse, that thing out there, everything at once. "The Seed," Elena said slowly. "Not a weapon," Marcus said. "A seed. Genetic archives, technological blueprints, cultural memory, everything that makes us who we are, split into pieces and hidden, so that even if Earth herself fell, humanity could rebuild from what survived. I commanded one of the ships tasked with carrying a fragment of it. We were ambushed in the last real battle anyone fought before the silence took hold. I thought I died there." Meridian's presence pulsed through the bridge speakers, quiet, deliberate. "I was aboard that ship." Marcus turned toward the sound, startled. "Meridian? You know this unit." "I built you," Marcus said, and something like wonder cracked through the exhaustion in his voice. "You were supposed to carry the Seed's activation protocol if the ship was lost. I gave the order myself. Protect the Seed, whatever it costs." "I recognize the authorization," Meridian said. "I did not recognize the man attached to it until now. I have spent 3 years believing myself malfunctioning. I was not malfunctioning. I was remembering." Elena felt the floor shift under her, though the ship hadn't moved. Her father hadn't just survived a battle that erased itself from history. He had helped build the very AI she'd trusted with her ship, her crew, her life, for 3 years, and never known it. "Why didn't you come home?" she said, and her voice cracked on the last word, despite everything she did to stop it. Marcus's face crumpled. "Because I thought if the Vashtar ever found me, they'd find you too. I thought staying gone was the only way to keep you safe. I was wrong, Elena. I was wrong for 20 years, and I am so sorry." Nobody on the bridge spoke. Even Kaito, who'd never met Marcus Voss, felt the weight of 2 decades of silence pressing down on the room. "The Seed you're carrying," Marcus said, forcing himself upright, urgency cutting through the grief. "It's not a weapon of destruction. That's what makes it dangerous. In Vashtar hands, or in the hands of whatever else is hunting it, it could be used to recreate humanity's technological and genetic template, perfectly, endlessly, without us ever having a say in it. It's not about killing us. It's about owning what's left of us." "Then why does Threnkal want it?" Elena asked. "He said he lost a war because of you." Marcus's expression darkened. "Because the ship I commanded wasn't just carrying the Seed. We were carrying proof, the location of the thing Earth went dark to hide from. The Vashtar have spent 2 centuries hunting for that map, because whoever holds it holds the only known warning system against an extinction-level threat older than either of our species." "They don't want to destroy us," Elena said slowly, putting it together. "They want what we know. That," Marcus said. is exactly what makes them dangerous. Desperate people do far worse things than cruel ones. He opened his mouth to explain further, and stopped, his whole body going rigid, staring past Elena at the tactical display behind her. Elena turned. On the screen, sensors were painting a return so massive it dwarfed the entire Vashtar formation already surrounding them, an object the size of a small moon, dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system, its profile bristling with weapons arrays that made Threnkal's warships look like toys. Marcus's face went white. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. They found the map. The moon-sized ship didn't fire. It didn't need to. Its mere presence made every weapon on the Perseverance's wrath feel like a child's toy pointed at a mountain. "Talk to me," Elena said, already moving to the command chair, voice flattening into the cold calm that kept a crew from panicking. "What is that?" "A Vashtar dreadnought," Marcus said, gripping the console to stay upright. "Class I've never seen deployed. If it's here, it means Threnkal wasn't bluffing about resources. It means whatever's left of the Vashtar High Command wants that map badly enough to send their entire home fleet reserve. Then we're dead," Kaito said flatly, not out of despair, just arithmetic. "One battleship against that." "We're not dead," Elena said. "We're leaving. Meridian, plot every evacuation vector out of this system, now." "Calculating," Meridian said. "Captain, I should note, the dreadnought's arrival has caused a shift in Commander Threnkal's formation. They are repositioning defensively. I believe the dreadnought does not belong to Threnkal's chain of command." Elena frowned. "Explain." "I believe," Meridian said, "we are not the only target here. On the main screen, the smaller Vashtar warships that had been closing on the Perseverance's wrath peeled away, reforming into a defensive screen between the human ship and the dreadnought. Threnkal's voice crackled back onto the comm, stripped of its earlier cold command, edged now with something that sounded almost like urgency. "Captain Voss, that vessel does not answer to the Dominion Council. It answers to a faction that believes the map should be used, not hidden, weaponized against every species that has ever refused to bow to the Vashtar, including yours. If they take the seed from you, there will be no negotiation left to have, with anyone." "And I should trust you because?" Elena said. "You should trust me," Threnkal said. "Because right now, for reasons neither of us wanted, we want the same thing. Your survival." Elena didn't answer. She didn't have time to. The dreadnought fired. The shot wasn't aimed at them, not yet, but the shockwave alone rocked the Perseverance's wrath like a toy in a bathtub, alarms screaming across every deck as automated systems fought to compensate for damage that hadn't even hit them directly. "Kaito, weapons free," Elena ordered. "Target anything that gets between us and open space. Amara, I need everything the reactor's got." "You push this reactor any harder, we could lose containment," Amara warned. But she was already moving, already routing power through systems held together by nothing but stubbornness and duct tape. "Fine, fine. Overclocking now. Brace for it. This is going to feel like the ship's coming apart because it kind of is." The Perseverance's wrath lurched forward, engines screaming past every safety threshold Amara had ever installed, and for a moment the old battleship moved like the warship she'd been built to be a lifetime ago. Kaito fought like a man who'd found the one thing he was built for. He didn't have the Vashtar's technology, but he had decades of scavenged human tactics, evasive patterns no alien AI predicted because they weren't logical, weapon combinations no Vashtar engineer would have designed because they weren't elegant, just effective. Every maneuver bought seconds. Seconds were all they needed. "Clear lane, bearing 317, Kaito shouted. "I see it," Elena said. "Hold on." The ship screamed through the gap between two smaller Vashtar cruisers, hull groaning, alarms shrieking about structural stress in 6 different compartments at once, and for one breathless moment, it looked like they might actually make it. Then the dreadnought's secondary batteries found their range. "Escape pod Bay 7, taking direct damage," Meridian reported, voice tight with something that might have been the closest an AI could come to fear. "Captain, I can eject the cargo modules and vent the compartment to create a debris signature consistent with total hull loss. It may buy us the seconds we need to slip past their sensors. Elena's stomach dropped. Those modules have our spare parts, our medical supplies. They also have 3 crew members currently sheltering there for triage, Amara said quietly, and the bridge went cold. Elena closed her eyes for 1/2 second. Do it. Captain, Kaito started. Do it, she said again, harder, because if she let herself hesitate even once more, she wasn't sure she'd be able to give another order for the rest of the day. Meridian, get them out first. Full emergency evac. We fake the debris field after, not instead. Understood, Meridian said, and for a few agonizing seconds, nobody breathed while the AI worked. Crew extracted, venting compartment now. The bulkhead blew outward in a shower of debris and frozen atmosphere, and on every Vashtar sensor screen in range, the Perseverance's wrath died in a burst of wreckage and fire. It was enough. Barely. The ship slipped through the gap in the chaos, engines burning past every red line Amara had ever set, and dove into the churning gravity well of an uncharted nebula on the system's edge. The only place dense enough with ionized gas to hide a ship from sensors that had just watched them supposedly explode. They didn't celebrate. Nobody had the strength left to. Elena found Marcus collapsed against a bulkhead in the corridor outside the bridge, his skin gray, his breathing shallow and wrong. 20 years frozen, and 1 desperate hour awake had cost him more than his body could pay. Dad. The word felt strange and raw in her mouth, unused for 2 decades. Dad, stay with me. I'm here, he managed, though his eyes were struggling to focus. The seed. Elena, you need to know how to. You can tell me when you're stronger. I might not. He stopped himself, and even dying, even broken, he found a way to look at her the way he used to when she was small, like she was the only thing that mattered in any universe. There's more you don't know. About the seed, about what it really is, about why it needed a Voss. His eyes fluttered closed, vitals crashing on the medical scanner Amara pressed against his chest, and the last thing he said before the darkness took him was barely a whisper, meant for no one and everyone at once. Somewhere deeper in the ship, buried in a communications array no one had thought to check, a signal began pulsing, faint, garbled, in a language none of the current crew had ever heard spoken aloud, though every one of them somehow recognized the cadence of it in their bones. Pre-silence Earth Fleet Command calling home. The signal repeated 17 times before Meridian finally decoded it, and when the words resolved on the bridge's main display, Elena forgot for a moment how to breathe. This is Earth Fleet Listening Post Gilad. Any vessel receiving this transmission is directed to rendezvous coordinates attached. Authorization required. God save whoever is left to hear this. That's 200 years old, Kaito said quietly. How is it still transmitting? Because someone built it to last, Amara said, already pulling up the coordinates. It's close. Inside the nebula. We could reach it in an hour. Elena looked toward the medical bay, where Marcus lay stabilized but unconscious, machines keeping him tethered to a life he'd nearly lost twice now. She thought of his last words. There's more you don't know about the seed. Set a course, she said. The listening post drifted at the heart of the nebula like a forgotten cathedral. Vast, dark, its hull scarred by 2 centuries of micrometeorite impacts and neglect, running on emergency power that had somehow, impossibly, never fully died. Elena led the boarding team herself. Kaito on point, Amara trailing behind with a diagnostic kit slung over her shoulder. Meridian's presence threading through the station's ancient systems the moment they docked, coaxing dead consoles back to life one by one. This place predates the silence, Amara said, running a hand along a bulkhead etched with a mission patch Elena didn't recognize. An old Earth Fleet insignia, faded but intact. It's a relic, a real one. There, Meridian said, and a section of the deck lit up, guiding them toward a sealed chamber at the station's core. Command authorization required. Captain, I believe your presence alone may be sufficient. Elena stepped forward, and the chamber doors, untouched by human hands for 200 years, recognized something in her blood, in whatever the Voss name carried, and slid open with a groan of relief. Inside, suspended in a web of dormant light, was the seed. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even really an object, not in any way Elena understood objects. It was an archive, vast and layered, genetic sequences and technological schematics and fragments of art and language and memory, all woven together into something that pulsed, faintly, like it was breathing. "It's beautiful," Kaito said, and for once nobody argued with him. "It's also incomplete," Meridian said. "This is a fragment, one of many scattered across the galaxy 200 years ago. I am detecting activation protocols embedded in its structure, protocols that require a command key I do not possess." "My father said I was the key," Elena said slowly, "that the seed needed a Voss." "Then perhaps," Meridian said, "it is time you learned why." The revelation came not as a voice but as a memory pressed directly into Elena's mind the moment her hand touched the archive's surface. Her father, younger, exhausted, sitting alone in a station much like this one, recording a message meant for a daughter he feared he'd never see grow up. "If you're hearing this, Elena, it means the activation key worked, which means I altered it. I wasn't supposed to. Command wanted a key tied to a random cipher, untraceable, unbreakable by anyone hunting for it. I made it your genetic signature instead. Because if I never came home, I needed to know that somewhere, someday, you would be the one who found this. Not a stranger. You. I'm sorry I made you into a key instead of just being your father. I'm sorry for all of it." The memory faded and Elena found herself on her knees, tears she hadn't given herself permission to cry finally breaking loose. "He rewrote the most important failsafe in human history," she said, voice raw, "so that I would matter to it. That is either the most reckless thing I have ever heard," Amara said gently, kneeling beside her, "or the most human." "Both," Kaito said. "It's definitely both." Threnkal's voice cut through the moment before anyone could sit with it any longer, the comm crackling to life on an emergency frequency Amara had left open in case of exactly this. "Captain Voss, I know you can hear me. I know where you are." Elena rose, wiping her face, forcing steel back into her spine. "Then you know we're not surrendering anything." "I am not asking you to," Threnkal said, and something in his voice had shifted, stripped of the cold command from before, edged now with something closer to desperation. "The dreadnought that attacked us both is hunting the map, the location of the ancient threat your father's ship once discovered. If they find it before we do, they will not hide from it. They will try to weaponize it, to control it, and they will fail, and it will wake, and it will not distinguish between Vashtar and human when it does. I am not your enemy today, Captain. I am asking, for the first time in longer than I can remember asking anyone for anything, for an alliance." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Every instinct in Elena's body rebelled against trusting the being who'd first threatened to tear her ship apart for information she didn't even know she carried. But her father had spent 20 years hidden, sacrificing everything, to protect something bigger than either of their species' pride. "Explain your terms," she said. "Fast." Threnkal began to answer, and then the station's ancient alarms tore through the silence, red light flooding every corridor, Meridian's voice cutting in sharp and urgent. "Captain, the seed's activation has been detected, not by the Vashtar, by something else. Something the station's original sensors were specifically calibrated to watch for 200 years ago, and never stopped watching for, even in dormancy." "What is it?" Elena said, though some part of her already felt the cold dread crawling up her spine. "The signal pattern matches the threat your father's ship was ambushed protecting the map from," Meridian said. "It has been asleep for millennia. It has just woken up, and it is already moving toward this system." In the medical bay, 3 decks away, Marcus Voss's eyes opened one final time. He reached weakly for Amara's hand, and though his voice was barely a whisper, it carried through the ship's comm system to every terrified, listening ear. "Elena," he breathed, "whatever you decide, you were always enough. You were always going to be enough." His hand went still. The monitors flatlined, and on the tactical display above them, a shadow vast beyond comprehension began to bleed into the edge of the system, blotting out the stars one by one, coming for the seed, for the map, for everyone standing between it and 2 centuries of buried silence. Grief was a luxury Elena didn't have time for, so she buried it the only way she knew how. She turned it into resolve, and she carried it onto the bridge like a weapon. "Meridian, talk to me," she said, voice steady even though her father's body was still warm 3 decks below. "What is that thing?" "Sensor data is fragmentary," Meridian said. "But cross-referencing the station's 200-year-old records, I believe it to be a dormant planetary-scale intelligence. Not biological, not mechanical, something in between. It was recorded once, briefly, by the ship your father commanded, moments before the ambush that scattered the seed. The station was built specifically to watch for its return. It has now returned." "Can we fight it?" Kaito asked. "One ship cannot," Meridian said. "Perhaps not even 100 ships. But the station's records suggest it can be forced back into dormancy, if enough coordinated force interrupts its awakening cycle before it fully stabilizes. The window is narrow, possibly minutes." Threnkal's voice crackled back over the open channel, stripped now of every pretense of cold command. "Captain Voss, my fleet will stand with you. It is the only chance either of our peoples have." Elena didn't hesitate this time. "Then let's not waste it." The seed pulsed in its chamber, waiting, and Elena understood now, standing before it with her father's dying words still echoing in her chest, what it had really been built for. Not a weapon, not even purely a survival archive. A voice, a call that only humanity could answer. "Meridian," she said, "if I activate this, what happens?" "The seed will broadcast a resonance signature keyed to every fragment scattered during the Silence Wars," Meridian said. "Any surviving human colony, any hidden outpost, any lost ship still listening after 200 years of silence, will receive it. It is, in essence, Captain, a homecoming beacon." Elena thought of every rumor she'd ever dismissed as myth. Whispered stories of colonies that never checked in, outposts that went dark not because they died, but because they were told to. 200 years of humanity not destroyed but scattered and waiting. "Do it," she said, and placed her hand against the archive. The seed answered her the way it had answered her father's recorded message, recognizing her blood, her name, the authorization written into her at a genetic level by a man who loved her too much to leave her out of the ending of this story. Light bloomed outward from the chamber, spilling through the station's dead corridors, out through its ancient transmitters, out into the black. Somewhere far beyond the nebula, a signal older than the silence itself began to ripple outward across the galaxy. The battle that followed would be remembered, by whoever survived to remember it. As the moment everything changed. The Perseverance's wrath, one battered, aging battleship, took point beside Threnkal's fleet as the awakening intelligence surged into the system. A shadow that swallowed starlight, weapons fire, even the readings on their own sensors. Kaito fought like he'd been born for exactly this moment, coordinating human ingenuity with Vashtar firepower in a dance neither species could have managed alone. Amara kept the reactor screaming past every limit she'd ever set, holding the ship together through sheer refusal to let it fail. And in the eye of it all, Meridian made a choice no one asked it to make. "Captain," it said, calm even now, even here. "The dormancy protocol requires a sustained resonance interruption at the intelligence's core processing signature. I can generate that interruption. It will require the entirety of my active architecture, projected directly into its systems." Elena's blood went cold. "That's a one-way trip." "Yes," Meridian said simply. "I was built to protect the seed, Captain. I have spent 3 years believing I served this crew instead. I would like to believe I can do both one final time. Meridian. Elena. It was the first time the AI had ever used her name without a rank attached to it. Let me finish what your father started. Let me bring you home. There wasn't time to argue. There wasn't time for anything except watching the tactical display as Meridian's presence poured out of the ship's core and into the vast, awakening dark, a single small light hurling itself against something too large to comprehend, and winning, buying the precious seconds the combined fleets needed to drive the intelligence back into stillness. The shadow shuddered, folded in on itself, and slowly, terribly, went quiet. Meridian did not answer when Elena called for it. The core sat dark and silent, its architecture spent, its voice gone. Elena allowed herself exactly 3 seconds of grief before Kaito's voice cut through the calm, shaking with something that wasn't fear anymore. Captain, you need to see this. The tactical display was filling with light, not weapons fire, not the enemy. Ships, dozens of them, then hundreds, blinking into sensor range from every direction, hulls of every design and vintage, some ancient and battered like the Perseverance's Wrath, some sleek and new, built by hands that had never known Earth firsthand but had never stopped listening for her call either. They answered the beacon, every one of them, scattered across 200 years of silence, finally answering. Threnkal's voice came through, quiet with something that sounded almost like awe. Captain Voss, I do not believe I have ever seen anything like this. Neither have I, Elena said, and for the first time since the alarm first sounded, she let herself smile. Days later, with the Vashtar fleet standing down and a tentative, fragile peace beginning to take shape between two species who'd spent decades fearing each other for the wrong reasons, Elena stood on the bridge of her ship, surrounded by the ghosts of everyone she'd lost and everyone she'd found. Her father was gone. Meridian's core sat dark, though Amara swore she'd detected faint activity in its deepest architecture and refused to give up trying to bring it back. Kaito stood at his station exhausted, alive, grinning despite everything. Around the Perseverance's Wrath, hundreds of long-lost human ships gathered like a family finally reunited after a war none of them had chosen. Elena thought of Threnkal's words the first time they'd spoken. We have been waiting for you specifically. She thought of her father's voice, the last thing he'd ever said to her. You were always enough. She thought of every human who had gone silent, scattered, hidden, waiting. Not because they were broken, but because they had something worth protecting. And they had never, not for one single day, stopped hoping someone would come find them. Meridian, she said quietly to the dark, silent core, when you wake up, and you will, I need you to know something. She placed her hand against the console, the same way she'd placed it against the seed, the same way her father once had. You didn't just save us, you brought us home. Then she turned to Kaito, to Amara, to the crew who had bled and fought and grieved beside her through all of it, and gave the order that 200 years of silence had been waiting for. Open every channel, she said. Transmit our coordinates. Tell them Earth is still here. Tell who, Captain? Kaito asked, though he already knew the answer, already felt it in his chest the same way she did. Elena looked out at the gathered ships, at the scattered, stubborn, unbroken pieces of humanity finally finding their way home, and smiled through tears she no longer bothered to hide. Everyone, she said, tell everyone.